All right, that was President Obama speaking earlier today about the deadly outbreak of violence in Ukraine. And today, the streets of the capital city, Kiev, were still burning, although, according to reports, the Ukrainian president and opposition leaders have now reached an initial truce. But I highly doubt that because of anything our commander-in-chief might have said, because his credibility on the world stage has taken such a big hit since taking office, particularly because he doesn't make good on his word. You may remember this baseless threat about Syria.
We have been very clear to the Assad regime, but also to other players on the ground, that a red line for us is we start seeing a whole bunch of chemical weapons moving around or being utilized. That would change my calculus. That would change my equation.
Well, didn't change it. Of course, the president later played down the importance of his so-called red line. So is this just one more example, the president leading from behind, and is that strategy responsible for fueling unrest in Ukraine, Syria, Venezuela, beyond? Joining us now, Fox News political analyst Juan Williams and the host of War Stories, Colonel Oliver North. All right, Juan, before I fight with you, I'm going to turn to Colonel North. I look at this, what's happening here, as Vladimir Putin literally taking Obama to the cleaners. And by that I mean from Syria, Iran, Egypt, the Middle East, the Ukraine, on every level, earlier Poland and the Czech Republic. And Putin literally is taken over and in areas where Russia was and the former Soviet Union were long gone.
And proof that the old axiom, into any vacuum, a leader will eventually come. Yeah. Putin has been handed this by what is essentially Jimmy Carter on steroids. If you could have imagined that someone is happy that Obama is president, it has to be Jimmy Carter, because he's no longer the worst president in our history. What Clinton has done, well, she had a part of this, but what Obama has done, Sean, is he has left us bereft of leadership in the part of the world where we desperately need to have it. Now, I'm the last person in the world that's going to advocate putting in American troops to quell the civil war that's occurring now in Kiev, like the civil war in Syria, like the civil war in Egypt. But it would have been nice to have had the credibility of being at least respected by our adversaries or admired by our allies, and we have neither as a consequence of his total failure of leadership.
You know, Juan, look at this. I mean, you've got pro-Western elements in Ukraine, and then, of course, you've got Vladimir Putin behind the scenes pushing more towards sort of Russia-dominated sphere of influence in the region. Is that Obama's fault at all?
I don't know how you reached that conclusion. I was listening carefully to you and to Colonel North talk about lack of credibility. I hope the two of you remember clearly that when the president threatened to use military force in Syria, the Congress would not approve. The American people did not want the United States getting militarily involved in another war.
That was his fallback position. But the president made a threat.
Position.
They crossed the line and he did nothing.
Missiles. Correct. And when the president said he wants the American people to speak, he wants the Congress's certification for this action, there was not any support for it. And I hope you remember that. Now, with regard to what's happening in the Ukraine, I think that you should look immediately to the European countries, because what you see there is they have failed in terms of coming to the aid of democratic elements inside the Ukraine and allowed the Russians and Putin to come in with their $15 billion bailout and take control.
There's absolutely nothing the Europeans can do because Vladimir Putin has them by the
cojones?
Yes, thank you. And no, he does, because if you look at the map, you can see the 7 pipelines that go from Russia through Ukraine, and that if he shuts them off, and he can do that, he will literally freeze them out this winter. Now, what you've got is a total lack of credibility in the government of the United States of America. And that's because the commander-in-chief, head of state, and chief executive has totally failed in his role as not only the head of state in this country, but also the leader of the free world. There is no leadership in the free world, except perhaps from our Canadian neighbors, who at least stand up and say the right thing when it comes to supporting people like those in Israel.
Last word, Juan.
Well, I just think that the world is a difficult map at the moment, but I mean, clearly the United States has been involved in everything from trying to end 2 wars, Iran, Afghanistan, negotiations.
Blame Bush.
No,
it's like a broken record. It's year 6 of his presidency, Juan.
I think that what we have in terms of the European Union's failures, remember Victoria Nuland, that State Department executive saying, you know what, blank you to the European Union because they're not dealing with the problems in the Ukraine and allowing Putin to run them over. But I don't know why you choose to pick on President Obama in every case. He's like,
do you ever
if it
remember
snows, it's Obama's
an
fault.
Italian leader, a Frenchman standing up to a Russian leader? It was always the American president, regardless of which party it was, either under containment with Truman or Ronald Reagan rolling back the evil empire. It took an American president, and we don't have one worthy of the name today, Sean. That's the problem.
All right, going to end it there. Guys, good to see you. Appreciate it.
Nice to